Jim Murphy, president of CFC. Over the years, whenever I would give a presentation about historic preservation and restoration, I would often refer to that process as the ultimate form of recycling, because we would keep the materials in place and the stored energy in the building that it took to construct it. Several years later, I heard of the phrase embodied energy, and now including that in my presentations. What is embodied energy? It's essentially the amount of energy that is consumed by all the processes associated with construction of a building, from the beginning in the mining, manufacturing, transportation, and labor that it takes to construct a building. There's a lot of labor, a lot of material, a lot of processes that we don't think about that go into construction of a building. But how is embodied energy measured? That is what we're going to be discussing today. It's measured by BTUs, or British thermal units. Essentially, if you had a gallon of gas in your car, the amount of BTUs in that 1 gallon is 115,000. And just think about how many miles you're able to drive on that 1 gallon of gas or amount of BTUs. Because of the size and mass of the West Baden Springs Hotel, we will be using the metrics of MBTU, which represents 1 million BTUs. West Baden Springs Hotel is a very, very large structure. I asked Greg Blum to help us with this. Trust me, I did not arrive at this calculation myself, but our engineer Greg Blum did. In using Greg's formula, we're going to try and estimate the amount of energy embodied in the West Baden Springs Hotel. If you've visited the West Baden Springs Resort before, you know it's a huge structure. There's essentially 1 acre of space within the West Baden Springs Hotel dome. Look at the 24 columns that encircle the dome. On top of each one of the columns where these ribs rest, there are rollers that's designed in there to help with the expansion and contraction that occurs through the seasons and the temperature changes here in southern Indiana. And that is designed to help reduce the cracks and stresses that you might otherwise see. There's a tremendous amount of glass, both on the walls and the ceiling as well, that it takes to provide that venue that they want to have in the West Baden Springs Hotel. Most notable is the dome. The dome itself has a lot of materials it took to construct the facility. The ceiling is a tremendous structure in itself. You'll notice at the top of the ceiling there's a compression ring that's directly above the disc. It's connected to the 24 columns by these steel ribs or beams, and each one of those weigh about 4.5 tons. Tremendous amount of material and weight that's used to construct this. So if you look at the dome itself, and here's another view of it, and another thing that's very interesting that you will note, the dome is 200 feet in diameter, about 600 feet in circumference, 100 feet high. I mentioned that the ribs and the 4.5 tons of weight, each one of them. I referenced the glass earlier. There's about 10,000 square feet of glass and 60,000 square feet of painted surface just in the dome alone. And there were about 12 million marble mosaic tiles that were laid on the atrium floor. So think back, June 1901 through May of 1902, less than a year, they constructed this magnificent facility. They transported the materials there by train. There was about 516 workers working approximately 60 hours a week, had 20 teams of mules and horses. And when you look at all that material that was transported from these various cars on the railroad, there were 45 cars of steel alone, 13 carloads of stone, 187 cars of sand, 171 cars of gravel. And you add all that up, and that is approximately 404 million BTUs of material. Some more materials that were brought to the West Baden project: 62 cars of cement, 26 cars of lime, 242 cars of cinders, and 51 cars of lumber. Adds up to over 61 million BTUs. And there's more to come. 450 cars of white brick. White brick was originally used on the structure. 16 cars of red brick. The red brick was used to pave the streets, which are still in use today. 4 tons of lead and zinc adds up to 113 million BTUs. So collectively, this is a snapshot of all the embodied energy that went into constructing the West Baden Springs Hotel. 516 workers, 20 teams of mules and horses, 4 tons of lead and zinc, 1,263 train carloads of material, equaling just over 579 million BTUs. More material that was used: 13,000 gallons of paint, 141 miles of electrical wiring, and 19 miles of conduit. And the reason there's more electrical wiring than conduit is you can put more than one wire in each conduit. Just under 8,000 light bulbs, 50 types of plants used in the gardens. And I remember when we originally worked on the grounds out in the garden, we planted 50,000 tulips. And one thing we learned is deer love tulips. And you fast forward to 1996, whenever Cook got involved with the restoration of the project. We began this restoration project. Phase 1 had about 457,000 hours of labor to complete this phase. When West Baden was first built, it had been estimated to take about 10 times the number of hours to build because of inefficiencies in 1901 versus today, and certainly the equipment that we have today versus what they had then. Take into account all the materials that has gone into the construction, and you see this photograph of the exterior brick facade, the paved streets, the glass roof and tiled roof. There's a tremendous amount of material, assembled labor to construct this beautiful facility. You multiply that by the 308,000 square feet of floor area, and you get a significant amount of embodied energy, equivalent to 579 million BTUs. As a point of reference, the average U.S. household energy use is just shy of 40,000 million BTUs per year. So to do the math, the embodied energy at the West Baden Springs Hotel is equivalent to enough energy to power approximately 14,516 houses. And to look at it another way, it could power one house for 14,516 years. This embodied energy, this information is a little dated, but what it does do is it gives representation of the embodied energy in not only West Baden, but French Lick, and all the other historic properties that we have restored over the years. In summary, between CFC, Cook Group, and the Cook family, we have restored, renovated, or remodeled 48 properties. 21 of those are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And 3 structures have also been restored. Those include an 1850s hay press, a fountain that was relocated, restored, and placed in a park here in Bloomington, Indiana, and also the murals that Mrs. Cook restored in the Monroe County Courthouse. All in all, this has created a phenomenal impact on the communities of which we live. I hope this has been of some interest to you. We'd love to hear from you. Again, this is Jim Murphy, the CFC, signing off.